Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo Varnadore with Asheville Real Estate News. Today we are doing something, as you can tell, different, something we haven't done before on the show, and it's actually matches up perfectly with the conversation. We are going to talk about some topics we haven't really discussed in depth at all, and very thankful and fortunate to be sitting here with someone who knows these topics in depth, does these type of deals all the time. So we're going to get a really fun insight on creative financing, notes, mortgages, owner financing, and the paper side of real estate. So before I introduce our guest, really quickly, just a quick reminder to everybody, a show's brought to you by American IRA LLC. They're a local IRA custodian here in Asheville. And very thankful for their support to get the show rolling. So, we're going to bring Joe Varnadore with Noteschool on. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Rodrigo. How's it going? It's going very well, man. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. Glad that we're able to talk. As I mentioned to you, as we were going through the technical difficulties of getting this set up, this is our first non-person podcast. So thanks for being the guinea pig.
Absolutely. Well, we're talking about, real estate and notes and all of that. And I'm glad to see that you have a IRA custodian that's actually sponsoring the podcast, because, basically that's one of the things that we teach you how to do at Noteschool is how to invest for your future with your self-directed IRA, and notes are the perfect thing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first time you guys came into Asheville, which was 4 years ago, maybe, give or take, that was one of the first, situations where I was really my eyes were opened up to the side of the creative. And Jim Hitt, who's actually who runs American IRA, he did another seminar right in that same time frame. And both of those, I was like, oh my goodness, it's a whole world of possibilities. So, but before we get into the world of possibilities, do you mind kind of giving everybody a little bit of background on who you are and how you got into the real estate game?
Right. Sure. So I was born at a very early age, and right. So I started out where most real estate investors start, and that's really I was 19 years old. I was on the 8 or 9 year college plan because I just didn't, see how that fit into where, I really wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So at 19, I bought my first house, and it was a fix and flip, and I was scared to death, and I did it. And, and kind of like they say, the rest is history. So, that was 19, I'm going to date myself here. So that was about 1979. So between 1979 and 1990, I did a lot of buy, fix, and sell, a lot of wholesale deals, did some landlording, and I discovered in 1990 the note business. And what it did, it opened up my eyes to the other side of real estate investing. It showed me really what it was, that it really, in most cases, it's better to be the bank in the situation than it is to really be the, deal with the property, the bricks and mortar property, right? So for the last 28 years, I have been growing in the note business, and literally, Rodrigo, I've done over 10,000 note transactions in the past 28 years. So I'm a little bit what you would call seasoned, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I think that would qualify for that for sure.
Yeah.
So you said that in 1990 you found notes, or how did you hear about notes, or how did you stumble into that?
Well, the notes have always been kind of a side of the real estate business that most people think are complicated. And that'll be one of the things that people will say to me, well, notes, yeah, you do notes. And, I've kind of heard of what they are, but man, I think they're really complicated. And then when I explain to them that, what looks complicated to me is finding that, today especially, is finding that perfect little ugly house that I can go out and put in an offer on, along with 20 or 30 or 40 other people that are trying to buy that same house at 70% of value, and then, make the deal and find the money, and then find the people to rehab it, and then to get it done on time and on budget, and put all of that together, and then put a marketing plan together and get it sold. That looks a little complicated for me, being on the note side of the business. Now, I've done both, and it's just one of those sides of the business that here's what I've learned to say is, if I'm talking to 100 people in a room, 5 of those people will kind of know a little bit about notes, which means 95% of the people out there are all doing the same thing, right? They're either trying to wholesale, they're doing fix and flip, they're landlording, they're doing a lease option, they're trying to buy some apartments, whatever it is. So you've got 95 people chasing 5 deals versus you've got 5 people that are in the note space that are chasing 95 deals. So it makes more sense for real estate investors today to learn the other side of the business. And what you can do with that side of the business is it opens up so much more inventory that's out there in the note side than really is available on the property side. I mean, every market I go to, and I'm all over the United States, and it's always an inventory problem.
Yeah, and so you're saying, like, you know, the other thing about it just being an inventory problem with houses, you know, I think that's something anybody who's ever gone hunting for a deal would say, hey, yeah, sometimes they're hard to find for sure. But is that not the same thing with notes then? When you go out and buy a note, you don't have any issue finding a note that makes sense, but worth, or the numbers make sense that's worth buying? Like, that's a pretty easier, relatively speaking, thing to do.
Right. Well, and we'll talk about some strategies here in just a minute, but because there are so few people that participate in the note side of the business, you just have so much less competition than you do when you're on the property side of the business. And again, there's that whole thing that, notes are complicated, and it's not really the case. And the great thing about the note space is you can do notes in your own backyard, you can do notes in Asheville, you can do notes in New York, but with the note space, since you're not having to deal with the property, you're just dealing with the financing, the paper that goes along with the property can be anywhere in the world, basically. And, you throw that back to, you've got Bank of America, and Bank of America, they don't really care where they make a loan. Quicken Loans, they don't care where they make a loan. They make a loan based on the local, what's going on there locally, wherever the property is. So you can do it locally, or you can do it, globally, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, no, that I think, it makes sense as far as the chasing the paper, right? But if somebody, obviously this is a very, as you mentioned, 5 people out in a room of 100 are chasing notes. So the word note might not be something that everybody's familiar with. Can we break it down and just start at ground zero?
Absolutely. So
build it from there.
So most of your, your watchers here and listeners, so they bought a house, right? So we go out, we find a house, we make a deal on the house, and then we make a deal with the financing. So either we're going to have a local bank, or we're going to have Quicken or Rocket, that are going to finance it. We're going to get a loan through them. Or it could be that the seller would finance the property for us as well. Right. So that's called seller financing. And, a lot of people don't realize that that's a big deal today is seller financing, where I can sell you my property, and Rodrigo, you don't have to go to a bank. I can just finance it for you. But anyway, so when you make the deal on the financing, you're then going to go to a closing company, a title company, or an attorney, and you're going to close that transaction. Well, during that, when you sit down there and you sign all these papers, you're going to sign hundreds of pieces of paper, right? Hundreds of documents. And the most important document that you would sign for the lender is going to be the promissory note, the mortgage note. And that is the IOU. That is the promise that you're making to repay the money that you have borrowed from the lender. So the note contains the amount of the loan, the interest rate, the term. Is it a 30-year loan? Is it a 20-year loan? What the monthly payment is. Does the monthly payment include taxes and insurance, or is it just, principal and interest? So the note is your promise to pay. So at closing, you sign the promissory note as the borrower. You as the borrower, the new homeowner, you own the house and you have the deed to the house. What the bank what your lender owns is the promissory note, the mortgage note, the promise to pay.
Right.
So that kind of simplifies that process, that it's just the paper that goes along with the property transaction.
So the note is the promissory note, right?
The note is the yeah, and it's called the mortgage. It's called a home loan. It's called a deed of trust. It's called a land contract. It's called
once you become seasoned, you can call it a note, right?
That's exactly right, man. Once you can talk the talk, man.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to something you said, kind of as you were talking about, owner financing. That's something that I think anybody who's ever done an owner finance deal is like, I love these. I'm going to keep going back to them. You said it's a big opportunity right now, and I know that that's something that you guys are talking about right now. What are you all seeing, or why is now a good opportunity for owner financing versus 5 years ago, a year ago?
Right. So what we know is that, and guys at Noteschool, we consult with some of the biggest home buyers in the United States. Guys like Kent Clothier from from Memphis Invest, and Sean Terry, and people that are buying, literally they're doing 1,000, 2,000 houses a year.
Yeah.
And what we've realized is that most investors, either wholesalers or fix and flippers, are having to make 20 offers in order to get one deal accepted. And the reason that that's happening is because everybody's making the same offer, right? I mean, everybody's trying to buy that property at 70% of value, right? And so you've just got all of these people that are doing that. And what we've learned and what we've taught some of these, these biggest investors in the US is that let's just kind of do one more little piece on this. Yeah, I'll make your 70% offer, Rodrigo, but I'll also offer to see if you'll sell or finance the property for me. And one of the things that we teach is that you can pay 20% more for a property than everybody else can if you can get the right terms. So my big, bold statement is that I am going to show, or I can show you how to double your success rate when making offers without spending an extra penny or an extra dollar on marketing. And I know that's a pretty big statement, but listen, with baby boomers and the people that are out there, we have been taught as investors that when somebody sells a house, that it's always a money problem, right? It's always a money problem. But it's not always a money problem. Sometimes it's just a real estate problem. You've inherited a house from your grandmother or your aunt, or you've got 4 or 5 rental properties, and you want the income. You just don't want to be the
you're just retiring, right?
Yeah.
You're just starting to phase out.
Retiring like crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you can make the right terms offer, you'll double your business, and that is really been, in our world, it has been kind of taking the industry at a very fast clip right now.
Yeah, no, I think so. When I've been doing real estate now 6 years, I think it is. And I think the first few years it was like I only heard 1 or 2 maybe people talk about it, and it was kind of like that's the golden egg. It's like if you can get a couple of deals like that, wow. Then now it's I think a lot of people are talking about it, exploring about it, curious about it at least, and trying to see how that fits into what they do.
Well, and I was in San Diego in July, and there was a lady that came up to me after the presentation, and she says, "Joe, I have really been trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this house." Yeah. She said, my husband and I, so we were married 65 years ago. He had passed away last year. They had bought this little house in San Diego, a little 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot house for $40,000. 50 years ago. And I'm smiling at this point because the next question I'm going to ask her is, so how much is it worth now, right?
Yeah.
And she says, well, my realtors tell me it's worth $850,000.
Wow.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And she goes, and I'm 85 years old. She says, I'm very healthy. She said, but I don't know what I would do with $850,000. I wouldn't throw it in the stock market. Yeah. She said, but what you just told me is I can finance it. I can be the bank. I can get a down payment and I can sell it. And I said, so let me ask you a question. I said, from what I've told you and what you've learned so far, I said, so what kind of interest rate would you be looking at? And she said, gosh, Joe, she said, if I could get 4 or 5% as far as an interest rate on this thing, I would be golden.
Yeah.
And, real estate investors like you or I, we wouldn't get out of bed for 4 or 5%, right? I mean, you got to get 10, 12% to get us really excited. But, this is a person, and this is the way most people are out there is, their alternative is either to invest in the stock market, maybe buy an annuity, or, put it in the bank and get 1% or 2%.
Yeah, no doubt. I think owner financing, I've always, over the past 2 years, I think transitioned to typically I make an owner financed offer first and then a cash offer. And it's like, well, shucks, I guess I can do cash if we have to have that conversation.
Right.
But,
exactly.
And on that note, I've been getting a lot of people who are like, oh, well, what are mortgage rates right now? And then that kind of guides the conversation as far as what sort of interest as well, which is always, I mean, a year ago was a much better conversation than now, but still.
Right, exactly. But, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not going to get any better.
No.
All these things we talk about, prices are, they may level off a little bit, but prices are still high and rates are going up. And we know they're going to go up 2 or 3 more times this year. So, it's the world that we live in.
It's just the process. So, Joe, I know, one of the reasons we're talking is you're coming to Asheville Saturday the 19th. Going to be doing a full seminar, kind of going through all of this in a lot more detail. Is there, in case somebody's not going to be in town or for whatever reason isn't going to be able to make it, which, can you give us a concrete example, like a golden nugget that somebody can, listen to this today? If they go out and apply it, they'll start making a difference for them in their real estate business?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's talk about real quickly. So, let's talk about, let's talk about the $100,000 to $150,000 house, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm out and I'm looking at a house and it's got an ARV of what? It's got an ARV of $140,000.
Okay.
Right, after repair value.
Mm-hmm.
And I could make an offer on that house, and if I were trying to be like everybody else, then my offer would be 70% of value, right? So it'd be 70% of 140. So I'd offer about $100,000 for it. All cash, close quickly, no contingencies or any of that, right? That's what everybody's doing.
Right.
But, I can go in and offer, if I can get the right terms, if I can become what we call a deal architect, and if I can negotiate do the proper deal structure, I could pay $120,000 for that house. Mm-hmm. I can buy it right. If I can get a 1% loan from the seller, or maybe a 2% loan, even a 3% loan from the seller to buy this, and I can pay $120,000, I may tell you, Rodrigo, I can pay you $20,000 more. You're going to have to finance it for me. But, really, do you need the cash right now? Because what you have is some people that are stuck on price. Well, I'll sell it, but I'm not selling it for less than $120,000 or less than $125,000. But I can buy it if I can buy it at a 1%, 2%, 3% interest rate. And I'll tell you, we through Noteschool, our actually parent company is Colonial Funding Group, and we buy thousands of seller finance notes every year, right? And so I talked to Scott Tyler, who is the guy that runs our pricing desk. So, Rodrigo, you've sold your house. You've 3 years ago, you seller financed it. You've been getting the monthly payment, but now you want a lump sum of cash, right? So you can sell your note. So I said, Scott, look up and see what you've done over the last few months. So Scott went back into his records and of the deals that he's priced and the deals that he's bought. And did you know that 30% of those loans, let's just call it, there was 500 loans, so 30% of those were sold with no money down. No money down. 25% of those were sold at 0%, 15% were sold at 0% interest, and then up to 30% of those were sold with 4% or less as the interest rate.
Wow.
So here's the interesting thing. And I always tell people, they say, well, 0%? I go, how many of you bought a car with 0% recently? How many of you have bought a new TV from Best Buy or furniture from the furniture store? It's all, that's kind of a big deal. Yeah. So I buy that house for $120,000 on terms. So I get a 2% loan from you for 30 years. Now, I can either go out and let's say that house would rent for $900 a month.
Yeah.
So I could flip that. I could wholesale that deal structured the way it is to someone that wants to be a landlord, couldn't I?
Yeah, no, yeah, okay. You'd find a lot of people.
They would pay me $15,000 to wholesale that structured deal to them, right?
Yeah.
Their monthly payment is $400 a month. Their monthly rent is $900 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a lot of people ready for that.
Or I could resell the house to an end user, to a family that's going to move for retail, right? $143,000. I could do it for them at 7%. They could pay me the difference between 100. Let's say it's 140 and 120. They could pay me $20,000 down. I could do a wraparound loan, keep that $120,000 loan as an underlying. Instead of doing it at 2 or 3%, I can do it at 6 or 7%. And the difference there is about $400 a month for 30 years. So I can create $20,000 now and $400 a month. And again, I'm the bank. I don't have to worry about paying the taxes or the insurance out of that monthly payment.
Right. No, that's
just one note strategy, man.
No, that is a good one. I hope if you haven't done an owner finance deal, you're able to follow that, go back, re-listen to it, because that's the way to go about it for sure. And one last thing I was hoping. I know you mentioned you're doing things in the IRA at the beginning.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get a short? Also, kind of, how do you get that IRA to do something to either buy a note, sell a note? I don't know. How do you do IRAs with financing, I guess?
So one of the cool things about what we do at Noteschool and Colonial Funding Group. Now, Colonial Funding Group is our funding. It's a hedge fund, basically.
Right.
And our founder, Eddie Speed, started that in 1980. So it's been around a while, right? And started Noteschool about 2003. The reason I mention that is because we actually – through Colonial, we go out into the marketplace and we buy 400, 500, 600 loans at a time. Now, some of those are going to be non-performing loans. Some of those are going to be performing loans. So let's say that you are a part of Noteschool and you have a self-directed IRA and you've got $25,000 sitting in your self-directed IRA. We deal with, some of the biggest IRA companies in the United States, and they will tell you that there's somewhere between 55 and 75 billion with a B dollars sitting in self-directed IRA accounts in dry cash. It's not invested.
That's insane.
So you've got $25,000 sitting in a self-directed IRA. You then go to to Colonial Funding Group and to Notes Direct, and you can kind of search on there, and you can find a performing loan. Now, a performing loan means that, people have been making payments on it. It may have 2 or 3 or 4 years of seasoning, meaning, the borrowers have made 4 years of payments on that, so it's well seasoned. And you can buy that note in your self-directed IRA. You'll buy it at a discount, basically, that you would yield somewhere between, 11 and 15% in your self-directed IRA in a safe investment that is truly passive.
Right.
That is truly passive.
Yeah, because if it's performing, then you don't have to do anything, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. You change you do a redirection of the payment from where it's going now into your self-directed IRA. And you're good to go. And one last thing for me is for those people that are kind of listening and they say, well, that all sounds good, but I'm just kind of basic. I don't know really where to start. Guys, you can wholesale a note actually easier than for fee assignments, for assignment fees, than you can a property. So a lot of good stuff there. And we just, we feel like we're on the razor's edge as far as what's going on in the real estate business in 2019.
No, Joe, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump on this and just talk a little bit. Can I put you on the hot seat? Really quick question. Since you guys are on the razor edge there, how do you view the market, in general for 2019? if I'm gonna be able to pin you down and get you to give me a prediction, is that something we can get?
Well, here's my take, and I could say something really cute like Jamie Dimon, who is the chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase. He was interviewed a couple months ago, and the guy asked him, so what do you think about the market? What do you think about the real estate market? What do you think about the stock market? He says, oh, it's gonna do an adjustment, right? I mean, it is going to adjust. But here's the thing. We don't know when, right? So we don't have a crystal ball. But what I see happening, I think, in some markets, prices are leveling off.
Yeah.
And days on market are increasing in a lot of the markets where they've been really hot. Mm-hmm. I've got my own opinion of that. And I think that people see the market now has kind of hit the top. And I think what people are doing, and the reason you're seeing more days on market in some areas, I mean, I'm talking about going from 20 days on the market to 40 days, is that saying, well, heck, if I can get $390,000 for my house and, it's worth $350, people are buying up, then heck, I'll just go ahead and put it on the market and sell it. So I think you're seeing a lot of that. I do think there's going to be some leveling off there. But today versus 05, 6, 7, and 8, that was kind of a whole false deal, right? Today, there truly is an inventory shortage. Builders aren't building, the way they were building, and they can't keep up with demand. So I think that there's a strong demand. I think that people are going to have to pay up if you're buying on the real estate side. Mm-hmm. But on the note side, we see a huge advantage in being on the notes. I'm not asking anyone to not invest in properties any longer. You know as well as I do that if we find a screaming deal, we're on it, right? On a house.
Everybody's buying it, no doubt.
No doubt about it.
That's true.
You're like everybody else, you've got a nut to feed every month.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to do what you got to do to make it work.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thanks so much for jumping on here. Just as a reminder, everybody, Joe's coming to town. It's January 19th. Really hope that you guys are able to make it. This is an event we're putting on in conjunction with Asheville Real Estate News with Carolina Real Estate Investors Association. So anybody who's a listener to the show has come to the meetups, who's been involved in any way. We got a coupon code for you guys. It's AREN1, so Asheville Real Estate News 1. When you do a checkout, we got special pricing for everybody. Nolan and myself will both be there, and obviously Joe's going to be there speaking. So hope to see everybody.
Hey, there. And one other bonus there. Don't want to interrupt you. We've got a top 10 DVD for everybody that shows up on Saturday. It's the top 10 biggest mistakes investors make in real estate. We've got a great mind map that we will give everybody that shows up on Saturday as well.
All right, awesome, Joe. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Take care.